I never had a choice. Not when you're born into a Dublin gutter with fists for fathers and curses for mothers. Not when the only future you can see is the blue blink of police lights or the red mist when a knife slides between someone's ribs. My name doesn't matter. Men like me, we erase our names the moment we pulled the trigger. Kinahan gave me a new one anyway, just a whisper in the dark. They called me Ghost. It fit. I was 16 when I did my first job for them. Not a big one, just rough up a rival's little brother outside a pub in Hitman. I did it with a rusty crowbar, cold rain slipping down my back, heart hammering not from fear but from the electric buzz of being alive. Afterward, when he was coughing up teeth and blood on the sidewalk, I didn't feel bad. I felt clean, like I had finally been seen by the world. Daniel Kinahan himself didn't notice me then. Men like him don't glance at street rats, but his lieutenants did. And once you get a taste of real money, not the coins you steal from drunks, but thick bundles that smell of new blood and old leather, you don't ever go back. They trained me. In a basement under a closed-down butcher shop, I learned how to silence a man, how to snap a neck with 2 precise twists, how to make a killing look like an accident if need be. But Kinahan didn't like accidents. He liked messages. Blood sprayed across marble floors, heads dipped into river canals, car bombs rattling windows for miles. By 19, I was traveling. London first, Birmingham, then Marbella. The Costa del Crime, they called it. And I was a ghost in every picture, a shadow at the corner of every crime scene. They paid me to clean up problems, snitches, rivals, men who talked too much or knew too little. I didn't drink, didn't fuck, didn't laugh. Emotions got you killed quicker than bullets. The first real hit was in a greasy back alley in South London. A former ally turned rat. His name was Sean the Pig Donnelly. We tailed him for 2 weeks. Watched him pick up his kid from school, eat lunch at the same shit cafe every Wednesday. He thought he was safe. The night we moved, it was raining hard. Cold enough that even the rats stayed under the dumpsters. I waited across the street, who'd pulled low, Glock wrapped in cling film against the damp. When Sean turned the corner, whistling, shoulders hunched, I stepped out. 1 shot to the back of the head. No warning, no words. He folded like a sack of wet cement, face down in the gutter, blood mixing with the rainwater, trickling into the sewer. I stared at him for a second longer than I should have. Not because I felt sorry, because I felt nothing, and that scared me more than anything else. Back at the safe house, I stripped naked and burned my clothes in an oil drum. The others laughed, drank cheap whiskey, played cards. I sat by the window, watching the city lights blink and blur, wondering when I had last seen a sunrise without thinking about who might be dying under it. They sent me to Spain next. Bigger jobs, bigger risks. Marbella was a war zone in silk suits and Ferrari engines. The Hutch gang was moving in hard, and Kinahan wanted blood. He got it. I killed a man in a golf resort parking lot, another outside a nightclub, one in his own fucking kitchen while his wife screamed and their baby cried in the next room. I never touched the wife, never hurt the kids. I wasn't a monster. I was just efficient. They said I was the best. Quiet, reliable, unseen, and they were right. Until the day everything cracked open like a skull under a hammer. It started with a job too simple, too clean. A courier boy, barely 18, who had skimmed product and thought he could hide. They sent me to deal with it. Only when I put the barrel to his forehead, I saw my own reflection in his wide, terrified eyes. For the first time in years, I hesitated. And that hesitation, that one breath, that 1 second of weakness, started a chain reaction that would burn the entire fucking world around me. The boy's name was Jamie. I learned that later, when it was already too late. That night, standing in the dripping alley behind a fish market in Marbella, I stared into his wide, wet eyes and something cracked inside me. He was shaking so badly I could feel it through the barrel of the gun pressed to his forehead. His lips moved, praying maybe, or begging, but no sound came out. For a second, he wasn't a courier, or a thief, or a liability. He was just a kid, like I had been. Before I let the world harden me into something else, I squeezed the trigger anyway. The click was louder than thunder in that narrow, filthy alley. Nothing. Safety on. Rookie mistake. I cursed under my breath, flipped the switch, and when I looked up again, the kid was gone. Bolted down the alley, shoes slapping against puddles, slipping and scrambling like a rabbit, trying to outrun the jaws, already closing around it. I should have chased him. I should have put a bullet in his spine. Instead, I turned and walked away. Maybe it was the whiskey. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe, deep down, I wanted to see what would happen if I didn't follow orders for once. Whatever the reason, it was the worst decision of my life. 2 days later, a body washed up on the beach near Estepona. Not Jamie. Someone else, one of ours. Tortured, burned, throat slit so deep his head was almost severed, and carved into his chest, in jagged, messy letters, one word: rat. Panic spread through the cartel like a virus. Someone was talking. Someone inside. Everyone was a suspect. I kept my mouth shut, kept my head down. I told myself Jamie had run, disappeared, that he wouldn't dare open his mouth. But paranoia has its own gravity. It pulls you in, crushes you, turns friends into enemies overnight. Within a week, 6 more bodies dropped. Some were probably innocent. Didn't matter. Kinahan's orders were clear. Purge, cleanse, burn it all down if we have to. And me, I became the blade in their hand. Ghost, they called me. The Reaper. It was almost funny. The boy I spared had made me a monster worse than anything I'd ever dreamed of. They sent me after old allies, after men who'd shared safe houses, meals, close calls. One by one, I erased them, execution style, cold and methodical. I didn't ask questions, didn't let myself think, until they sent me after Mikey. Mikey was different. We had come up together, bled together. He was the closest thing I had to a brother. The orders were simple. Mikey's been talking. Finish it. I remember standing outside his flat in Malaga, the Beretta heavy and silent under my jacket. I remember his voice, laughing with his girlfriend inside, carefree. And I remember my hand shaking just once, just a tremor. When Mikey opened the door, he smiled at me. No fear, no suspicion. Ghost, Jesus, you scared me, mate. You look like shit. Come in, have a beer. I shot him in the chest before he finished the sentence. 2 more in the head, just to be sure. His girlfriend screamed, bolted for the window. I let her go. My job was Mikey. Just Mikey. Blood slicked the tiles under my boots. His body twitched once, then went still. And that night, when I burned my clothes in a trash can and watched the flames lick the stars, I realized something had shifted inside me for good. I wasn't Ghost anymore. I was Death, and I had forgotten how to be anything else. The purge continued. Marbella became a slaughterhouse. Rival gangs smelled the blood, and like sharks, they came circling. Irish, Spanish, Moroccan, Russian, It didn't matter. Everyone wanted a piece of the Kinahan Empire now. And then came the call. Daniel himself, not one of his lieutenants. Not a second-hand whisper. Daniel fucking Kinahan. He wanted me back in Dublin. Personal job, he said. High profile, big mess if you fuck it up. I said yes, because men like me don't say no. But in my gut, a cold, coiled dread had already started to grow. Dublin wasn't just home. Dublin was memory. And in Dublin, the past was waiting, teeth bared, claws out. The flight to Dublin felt like a descent into hell. I hadn't been back in years. The last time I left, it was in the trunk of a rusted Honda, blood dripping from a hole in my thigh, sirens screaming somewhere far behind us. Now I came back as Kinahan's personal executioner. No fanfare, no welcome, just rain and cold and the stink of the Liffey. A black BMW was waiting for me at the airport, idling by the curb, windows dark as shark eyes. I slid into the back seat without a word. The driver didn't speak. He didn't need to. He wasn't there to make small talk. Inside the car was a manila envelope, thick and greasy from a dozen nervous hands. I opened it. Photographs, details, routine stuff, until I saw the name, Liam Ward. The world tilted sideways for a second. I gripped the seat, breathing slow, willing myself not to break. Liam Ward. We'd grown up together in Baileyman, thrown stones at cops together, shared stolen cigarettes behind broken sheds. He was the first person who taught me how to throw a proper punch. The first to show me how to wrap a knife handle in tape so it didn't slip when blood made it slick. And now he was marked for death by my hand. I flipped through the photos. Liam, older, but still recognizable. A little heavier, a little grayer, smiling in one shot, arms around a woman and two kids. Kids, Jesus. The instructions were clear. Make it messy, make it public. No mistakes. Daniel wanted a message sent, not just to the Hutches or the Russians or the dozens of other wolves snapping at our heels. He wanted to remind Dublin who owned its streets. And he wanted Liam's blood to paint that message in bold, screaming letters. The driver dropped me at a safe house in Drumcondra. 2 rooms, mildew creeping up the walls, a broken TV flashing static. There was a pistol under the bed, a hunting knife taped to the underside of the sink. I sat on the stained mattress, holding Liam's photo, feeling something sour rise in my throat. For the first time in years, I thought about quitting, just disappearing. Take a ferry to England, lose myself in the cracks of some forgotten town. But I knew better. Ghosts don't retire. They just get buried deeper. So I planned the hit. Old habits, easy. I knew Liam's patterns better than he probably did himself. Work at a garage off Dorset Street. Lunch at O'Malley's pub every Friday. Home by 6, unless he stopped to pick up a few pints. Friday was tomorrow. Perfect. I spent the night lying awake, counting cracks in the ceiling, listening to the city breathe and shift around me like a restless animal. When morning came, grey and bloated, I dressed carefully, black jeans, black hoodie, cap pulled low, invisible clothes for an invisible man. I walked to O'Malley's with the easy, rolling gait of someone who belonged there. No one looked twice. Inside, the place smelled of old sweat and spilled Guinness. Rugby on the telly. Pensioners arguing at the bar. And there, at the corner table, was Liam, laughing, alive. He didn't see me. Not yet. I could have left. Could have turned around, walked out the door, vanished. But I didn't. Because men like me don't get choices. I waited until he got up to piss, followed him into the grimy bathroom, where the tiles were cracked and the lights buzzed like angry bees. He was at the urinal, humming some stupid tune. I pulled the knife from my sleeve, the hunting blade curved and hungry. One step, another, and then he turned, saw me. For a split second, his face lit up. Pure instinct, pure memory, ghost. Jesus, is that you? I stabbed him under the ribcage, angled up, right into the heart. His mouth opened, tried to scream, but only a wet gargle came out. Blood bubbled between his lips. He sank to the floor, twitching, gasping. I knelt beside him, holding his gaze until the light went out. Not because he needed comfort, because I needed to see it. The moment the soul snuffed out, proof that I was still real, still here. When it was done, I slipped out the back door, blending into the grey drizzle of the Dublin afternoon. Another ghost in a city full of them. The city swallowed me whole. I ditched the knife in the canal, burned the clothes in a trash barrel behind an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Every move rehearsed automatic. By nightfall, I was back in the safe house. A ghost watching static flicker on a broken television, the echoes of Liam's dying gasp still ringing in my ears. A knock came at the door. 3 soft raps. 1 hard. The signal. I opened it to find a courier kid, couldn't have been more than 17, holding a brown envelope. He didn't say a word, just thrust it into my hands and vanished into the rain. Inside was a plane ticket back to Spain, first class. No note, no congratulations, just orders. I packed what little I had and left without looking back. Dublin wasn't my home anymore, hadn't been for a long time. It was a graveyard now, but as the plane climbed into the stormy black above the Atlantic, I felt no relief, only a tightening in my chest, the kind that warns you it's not over, not even close, because somewhere in Dublin someone had seen me. I didn't know it yet, but the noose was already being tied. Marbella glittered under the Spanish sun, all fake tans and cheap gold. From the outside, nothing had changed. The cartel still ruled the Costa del Sol with bloody hands wrapped in velvet gloves. The money still poured in drugs, guns, bodies. The blood still ran under the polished marble floors of the beach clubs and casinos. But inside the Kinahan Empire, cracks had started to show. Paranoia thick as smoke, whispers of betrayal, names disappearing from the books and from the earth. I was summoned to a villa on the outskirts of town. Big place, white walls, red tile roof, a pool glittering like a knife blade in the sun. Daniel was waiting for me on the terrace. Not the slick, smiling prince of the underworld the newspapers loved to paint. He looked tired, older, eyes sunk deep into his skull. "You did good work in Dublin," he said, without looking at me. "But there's more." He handed me another file. No names this time, just photographs, surveillance shots, Irish cops, Spanish detectives, Interpol agents. "They're getting close," Daniel said. "Too close. We need to remind them what happens to rats." I flipped through the photos. Faces of men and women who had families, lives, hopes, all marked for death. "You're my sword, ghost," Daniel said, his voice low, almost tender. "You don't flinch, you don't question, you do what needs to be done." I nodded, because what else could I do? But deep down, something was changing. Each name I erased, each life I snuffed out, chipped away another piece of whatever humanity I had left. Soon, there would be nothing but the blade, nothing but the ghost. The first target was easy. A Spanish inspector who liked to drink at a dive bar near the port. I waited until he stumbled out into the alley behind the place, fumbling for his keys. 2 silenced shots, one to the heart, one to the head. He dropped without a sound. I was gone before the blood finished pooling around his body. The next was harder. An Irish detective working out of a safe house in Malaga. He was careful, paranoid, had a wife and a new baby. I watched them from across the street, night after night, the baby's cries carrying through the open windows. It took 3 weeks to find an opening, a night when he left alone to meet a source. I followed him to a parking garage, empty except for a few scattered cars. The concrete walls echoed every footstep, every breath. When he turned a corner, I was there. A quick, brutal struggle. A blade across the throat, fast and deep. He died staring up at the flickering fluorescent lights, gurgling, clutching at the wound, blood spraying like a fountain. I whispered, "Nothing personal," before he stilled. A lie, it was all personal now. But killing cops was different. It stirred up a hornet's nest. The papers screamed. Interpol threw resources at the case like gasoline on a fire. The Spanish police cracked down, raiding bars, safe houses, warehouses. Men I knew vanished into black vans or turned up floating face down in the Mediterranean. The cartel tightened its circle. Trust evaporated. Anyone could be a snitch. Anyone could be next, including me. I started sleeping with one eye open. Started carrying an extra piece tucked in my boot, a knife up my sleeve. I stopped drinking, stopped laughing, stopped pretending I was anything but a dead man walking. Because I could feel it, the weight in every look, the pause in every conversation. My time was coming. And when it did, there would be no warning. It started with a whisper, a muttered warning in a piss-stained nightclub bathroom. "Watch your back, ghost." I didn't know who said it. Didn't matter. The message was clear. Daniel's patience was wearing thin, or worse, he thought I was a liability. Men like him don't send polite notices when they want you gone. They send bullets, or blades, or, if they're feeling theatrical, a shallow grave in the hills. I needed an exit, fast, but the thing about this life, you don't get to walk away. Not unless your body is cold and your face is unrecognizable. I started planning, carefully, quietly, the way you plant a bomb with trembling hands, praying it doesn't blow you to pieces before you finish wiring it. First, I needed money, real money, enough to disappear. New passports, new faces, new lives. And that meant robbing the very people who would flay me alive if they caught a whiff of it. I knew where Daniel kept his emergency stash. A safe hidden in a wine cellar beneath one of his many villas. The kind of place nobody but trusted men ever saw. But I wasn't trusted anymore. Which meant I had to move, fast and brutal. One shot, one chance. I reached out to the only person crazy enough to help me. Mara had been my lover once. Maybe the only human being who ever touched whatever shriveled husk passed for my heart. Now, she was working for herself, smuggling guns, blackmailing judges, carving out her own bloody little kingdom on the Costa. She owed me a favor, and she repaid her debts. We met in a dive bar where the air smelled like old cigarettes and broken promises. She looked the same, hard, beautiful, dangerous. The kind of woman who smiled while she slid a knife between your ribs. "You're a dead man, ghost," she said, sipping her whiskey. "You know that, right?" "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not." She laughed, a low, dark sound. "All right, you stubborn bastard. What's the play?" I told her everything. No lies between us. Not this time. By the time I finished, her smile was gone. "You're insane," she said, "but you've got balls. I'll give you that." She agreed to help. Not for love, not even for the money, but because some part of her still remembered the kid I used to be. Before the blood, before the ghosts. The night of the heist, the air was heavy with the scent of salt and gasoline. Mara handled the security, hacked the cameras, looped the feeds, jammed the alarms. I handled the guards, 2 quick kills, silent and clean, bodies hidden behind crates of vintage Bordeaux. The safe was tougher. Old school mechanical lock, no biometrics, no codes, just pure, unbreakable steel. But Mara had brought the right tools, and the right explosives. The blast was small, but deafening in the enclosed cellar. My ears rang as the safe door groaned open, spilling its guts. Cash, diamonds, passports, enough to buy a new life a dozen times over. I stuffed the bags full, heart hammering in my chest, every second feeling like an hour. The clock was ticking. Guards would be swarming any minute. We made it out through the storm drains, crawling on our bellies like rats through the filth and muck. Freedom reeked of sewage and victory. But nothing ever goes perfectly. Not in this life. As we emerged into the night, gasping and slick with grime, headlights flared in the alley, engines roared, voices shouted, ... Daniel's men. Dozens of them. They'd known. They'd always known. I hadn't been planning an escape. I'd been walking into a trap. Mara cursed, pulling a pistol from her waistband. I did the same, and then the shooting started. It was chaos, bullets shredding the darkness, screams, blood, smoke. I moved through it like a phantom, every shot deliberate, every step a dance with death. Mara fought beside me, her face a mask of pure rage, pure survival. We killed 7 men before we reached the end of the alley, but it wasn't enough. More were coming. Endless, ... relentless. Mara took a round in the side, spinning her around, blood spraying against the brick wall. She staggered but kept firing. "Go," she screamed at me. "I'll hold them. Not without you," I growled. "You're the ghost, damn it. Disappear." A tear tracked down her blood-smeared face. The first and last weakness I ever saw in her. I hesitated. For the first time in my life, I hesitated. And in that second, she shoved me backward, hard, into a side door I hadn't even seen. It slammed shut between us. I heard her die on the other side. Gunfire, a choked scream, silence. I ran like the devil himself was snapping at my heels. Through alleys and sewers and streets slick with rain and blood. Until I reached the safe house, Mara had prepared a windowless room buried deep beneath an abandoned butcher shop. I collapsed there, shaking, clutching the blood-stained bag to my chest. Alone, again. The ghost, untouchable, unkillable, and more hollow than ever before. The days blurred. I stayed underground, a ghost in truth now. No windows, no clocks. Just the stench of old meat seeping from the rotted walls and the slow, relentless crawl of my own mind turning on itself. I cleaned my guns, counted my money, stared at the bloodstains that wouldn't wash out from my jacket. Sometimes I heard footsteps above rats, maybe worse. Every creak of floorboards sent adrenaline tearing through my veins. Every car engine outside sounded like a death sentence pulling up to the curb. I didn't sleep, couldn't, because when I closed my eyes, I saw Mara's face, the way she had looked at me, the way she had died, and worse, I saw the faces of all the others too. Liam, the inspector, the detective, the kid in Dublin who hadn't even had time to scream. They lined up in the dark behind my eyelids, reaching for me with broken hands, mouths open in silent accusations. "Murderer," they whispered. "Coward." I pressed the barrel of my Glock to my temple more times than I could count. But I never pulled the trigger, because deep down I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. There was one more thing I had to do. The only thing that mattered anymore. I had to kill Daniel Kinahan. It was suicide. I knew that. Didn't care. He had set me up, used me, thrown me away like garbage. Just another tool to be broken when it outlived its usefulness. He thought he was untouchable, hidden behind walls, men, money. But he had made one mistake. He had underestimated what he had created. He had forgotten that I was a weapon, sharpened by his own hand, now pointed back at him. I started planning the hit, carefully, obsessively. Daniel wasn't hiding in Marbella anymore. Too hot, word on the streets said he was holed up in a fortress-like estate, somewhere in the hills above Estepona. Private security, ex-military, minefields, drones, dogs. A normal man couldn't even get close. Good thing I wasn't a normal man anymore. I spent weeks gathering intel, bribed a crooked landscaper for blueprints of the estate, paid a hooker who serviced the guards for their shift patterns, tracked supply trucks and maintenance crews, mapping every weakness, every blind spot, every move calculated, every risk measured. I became invisible. A shadow among the living. Less than human. More than human. The ghost. The night I moved, the world was drowning in rain. Perfect cover. I wore black from head to toe, face painted in streaks of grey and green. 2 suppressed pistols, a combat knife, explosives strapped to my chest. No backup, no second chances. Either I killed Daniel tonight, or I died trying. And for the first time in a long time, that thought didn't scare me. It almost felt like freedom. I slipped through the outer fence under cover of the storm, avoided the cameras, neutralized 2 guards with silent, brutal efficiency, quick knife work to the kidneys and throat, bodies hidden under wet bushes, blood washed away by the rain. Crossed the open lawn in a low sprint, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. Up the side wall using the trellis vines, onto the balcony. The security inside was tighter. Men patrolling the halls with military precision, earpieces, automatic weapons. I moved like smoke, hugging the walls, slipping through blind spots, a ghost slipping through the seams of reality. One by one, I eliminated the guards. A whisper of breath, a flash of steel, gone, until I reached the master suite, Daniel's lair. I kicked the door open. He was there, just as I knew he would be, sitting behind a massive oak desk, a half-empty bottle of whiskey beside him, a pistol in his hand. For a long second, we stared at each other, hunter and prey, except neither of us knew which was which anymore. "Ghost," he said, almost smiling. "I was wondering when you'd show up." He raised the gun, too slow, way too slow. I shot him through the hand. The pistol clattered to the floor, his scream tearing through the room. I crossed the space between us in 3 long strides, grabbed him by the collar, and slammed him back against the wall so hard the paintings rattled. He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time I saw it. Fear, pure, naked fear. It was beautiful, and it was awful. "You made me," I said. "Now unmake me," and I pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through his skull, painting the white wall behind him in a blossoming flower of blood and brain. Daniel Kinahan, king of the Costa, lord of murderers, architect of my damnation, died with his mouth open in a silent scream. Just another corpse, just another ghost. I didn't run, didn't hide. I sat there, in that grand, blood-soaked room, listening to the alarms wail, listening to the boots hammer toward me, smiling, for the first time in years, truly smiling, because it was over, finally. They burst through the door, shouted in Spanish, guns raised. I didn't fight, didn't flinch, didn't move. I let them take me, because death had already claimed me a long time ago, and all that was left now was the reckoning. They threw me into a cage somewhere deep in Malaga. No trial, no questions, just chains, darkness, and the stink of old blood soaked into the stones. An unofficial prison. A place for problems that couldn't be solved with courts or bullets. A place where the world forgot you existed. And I deserved it. Every second of it. The cell was barely bigger than a coffin. Damp walls. A filthy mattress crawling with insects. A bucket for a toilet. I counted the hours by the drip of water from a broken pipe. I counted the days by the decay of my own body, the way my muscles wasted. My ribs protruded, my skin stretched thin and pale over brittle bones. They fed me once a day, rotten bread, lukewarm water that smelled of rust. I didn't speak, didn't move unless I had to. I became less than human. A shade, a shadow, an echo of the ghost I had once been. And still, in the endless night behind my eyes, I saw them. The faces, Mara, Liam, the kid in Dublin. Daniel, still with that bullet hole grinning from his forehead. They whispered to me, sang to me, laughed at me. You thought you could escape, they said, but you are the cage now. You carry it inside you. And I knew they were right. There was no freedom. Not for men like me, only different kinds of prisons. Some built of concrete, some built of memory. One night, or maybe it was day, it didn't matter anymore. The door scraped open. Blinding light poured into the cell, stabbing into my skull like knives. I threw up my arm, half blinded, half feral. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Someone stepped inside. A silhouette against the brilliance, tall, broad-shouldered. He spoke English, a crisp, cutting accent I recognized immediately. Irish hello, ghost, he said, voice like broken glass. Did you miss us? His name was Declan Murtagh, Daniel's right hand before I had taken the king's head. A monster in a world of monsters, torturer, butcher. Worse things, whispered in terrified voices, by men who knew better than to speak too loud. I had thought he was dead. Rumors said he had vanished into the jungles of Colombia after the Marbella Wars, but here he was, very much alive, and very much smiling. You killed the boss, Declan said, crouching down to meet my hollow gaze. Left a hole in the empire. He reached out, tapped my forehead with a thick, scarred finger. Now it's my empire. I said nothing, just stared at him, willing my hatred to burn through the fog in my mind. And you, he said, grinning wider, you're going to help me cement it. They dragged me out of the cell, beat me until my vision danced with stars, stripped me, scrubbed me raw with wire brushes and cold water, dressed me in black again, black shirt, black pants, black boots, a uniform, the ghost reborn, but not free, never free, a dog on a leash, a weapon with no will. Declan wanted me to kill again, old enemies, new rivals, anyone who dared question his reign, and if I refused, he showed me a photo. Grainy, blurry, but unmistakable. A woman, dark hair, sharp eyes, holding a child. Mara's sister and her little boy. The last blood ties I had in this world. The last fragile pieces of something resembling humanity left inside me. Declan knew. He always knew. "Kill for me," he said, voice like ice, "or I kill them." Simple, brutal, final. And so, the ghost went back to work. I killed, and killed, and killed. Faces blurred into each other. Names meant nothing. Only the mission mattered. Protect them at any cost, even if it meant damning what little was left of my soul. But something had changed. Deep inside, a crack in the stone, a flicker in the void. Every time I pulled the trigger now, every time I ended a life, I heard Mara's voice, soft, broken. "You're more than this." And that seed of doubt grew, watered by blood, fed by regret, until one night, standing over the cooling body of a man who had begged for his life in a language I didn't even understand, I realized I couldn't do this anymore. Not for Declan, not for anyone. I had to finish it, once and for all. Burn it all down, even if it meant burning myself with it. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was something worse, something the darkness itself feared, and I was coming for them. Every last one, starting with Declan Merton. I didn't run, didn't hide. I made myself visible, deliberate, purposeful. Let the whispers spread through the streets of Malaga, the back alleys of Gibraltar, the seedy docks of Algeciras. The ghost is loose. I started small. Declan's couriers, his bagmen, his dealers. I left them where they fell, bodies slumped across steering wheels, throats opened in dirty kitchens, blood leaking through nightclub floors, sticky with sweat and regret. Each death sent a message. Each corpse was a letter carved in flesh. I'm coming. Declan tightened security, moved locations, surrounded himself with killers and cowards. Didn't matter, wouldn't save him. Because this wasn't about tactics anymore. This was something older, something primal, vengeance. The night I went for him, the city was drenched in mist. Low and heavy, curling through the alleys like fingers searching for a throat. Perfect. I was mist now. Mist and memory and rage given form. He was holed up in a warehouse down by the docks. An old smuggling hub converted into a fortress of steel and concrete. Fences topped with razor wire. Watchtowers, floodlights cutting the darkness into jagged shards. Dozens of guards, maybe more, didn't matter. I moved like death itself, silent, inevitable. One by one, they fell. Silent knife thrusts under the ribs. Garrote wires tightening around throats. A whisper of breath before the plunge into nothingness. Blood slicked the concrete. Boots thudded against the ground. Radios crackled and went silent. Declan must have known, must have felt the air itself shift, grow heavy with inevitability. He ran, of course he ran. I chased him through the bowels of the warehouse, past stacks of shipping containers, past cages of trafficked bodies, too broken to scream, past piles of money stained with old blood. The empire he had built, brick by brick, on suffering and fear, crumbling behind him. Behind me, I caught him at the water's edge. He turned, wild-eyed gun trembling in his hand. "Don't," he screamed, voice cracking. "We can deal. We can work this out." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I shot the gun from his hand, watched it spin into the dark waters below. Then I stepped closer, one step, another, each step a lifetime. Declan stumbled backward, fell onto his arse, scrambling like a crab. Pathetic, small. Nothing, Please, he gasped. Please, ghost. Mercy, please. I crouched in front of him, looked into his eyes, saw everything I needed to see. The cruelty, the cowardice, the cancer at the heart of it all. Mercy is a lie you told yourself to sleep at night, I whispered. There's only justice now. And I pressed the barrel of the gun against his forehead, right where Daniel had once fallen. A perfect mirror, a perfect ending. Declan sobbed, begged. I pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked across the water like a judge's gavel. It was over, the Empire dead, the monsters buried, and me. I staggered to the edge of the dock, staring down into the black waters below, saw my reflection staring back, hollow, broken, free, or maybe just finished. I thought about Mara, about Liam, about all the ghosts that would follow me until the end of time. I thought about the boy, Mara's nephew, growing up never knowing the depths of the abyss I had fallen into to keep him safe. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was redemption. Or maybe redemption was another lie, like mercy. Didn't matter. Not anymore. I dropped the gun into the water, watched it vanish into the black, swallowed like it had never existed. Then I turned, walked away from the docks, from the city, from the past. Not toward salvation, not toward forgiveness, just toward whatever came next. _ I am the ghost. And this is the end of my story.